The median American between 35 and 44 has a net worth of $135,600, according to the Federal Reserve. Sounds like they are doing okay, except roughly 80,000 of that is locked inside their house, equity they can't touch without selling or borrowing against. So their actual investable portfolio, the part that earns returns while they sleep, the part that compounds, is closer to 55,000. Exclude home equity from the national median, and the number drops from 192,900 to roughly 57,900. And 57,900 is almost exactly $50,000 short of the one specific number that changes how wealth building works. That number is not a million. It is not 500,000. It is 100,000. According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, only 22.1% of Americans have crossed that line. The other 77.9% are parked below the threshold, where compounding stops being decorative and starts being structural. Most of them are $50,000 away from a completely different financial life, and they are doing nothing about it because it does not feel urgent. It should. Here's what this video is actually about. There is a specific number in personal finance, not a milestone, not an aspiration, but a mechanical inflection point where the rules of wealth building change. Below it, you are doing almost all the work yourself. Above it, your money starts carrying its own weight and then some. I am going to show you the exact math behind why $100,000 is that number, why the most common failure is plateauing at roughly half that amount and calling it progress, why the fee structure and the psychology of almost there keep people trapped below the line, and what the single most important 2-year decision window in your financial life actually looks like. I'm not going to give you generic start early and save more advice. I have multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars invested and 10+ years running a business. I have sat with accountants and fiscal lawyers who showed me how money actually behaves at different levels. What I am going to give you is the mechanism. Think about a rocket, not metaphorically, mechanically. A rocket pointed at the sky below, escape velocity goes up, slows, reverses, and falls back. Gravity wins. Above a certain speed, about 7 miles per second, something different happens. The rocket does not fight gravity anymore. It has enough momentum that gravity becomes negligible. Escape velocity, $100,000 invested, is your financial escape velocity. Below it, you are mostly adding fuel manually. Above it, the engine runs on its own. I am going to use this throughout the video because it also explains the most common failure mode in personal finance, which is not going broke. It is running the engine at 90% of escape velocity for years, feeling like you are making progress and never quite pushing through. Gravity wins slowly, quietly, and you do not notice until it is too late to do much about it. In a few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what the difference in lifetime wealth looks like between someone who pushes through the threshold at 39 versus someone who coasts at 75,000 and calls it good. The math is going to bother you. But first, let me give you the numbers that explain why the first 100,000 is structurally different from everything that comes after it. Take someone investing $10,000 a year at a 7% annual return. It takes roughly 7.8 years to reach $100,000. And in that entire period, around 70% of the balance is just the person's own contributions, about 78,000. Only about 22,000 came from actual growth. That is the rocket below escape velocity. The person is doing almost all of the work. The market is barely contributing. The most powerful psychological barrier to saving at this stage is present bias, our overwhelming tendency to value immediate rewards over future ones. And the math reinforces it, because 7% on $30,000 is $2,100. It does not feel like anything. You are dragging a boulder up a hill with your bare hands and calling it compounding. Now, watch what happens on the other side of the threshold. If that same person continues investing $10,000 a year at 7%, the second 100,000, from 100,000 to 200,000, takes only 5.1 years. The third 100,000 takes 3.78 years. And by the time you are going from 900,000 to $1 million, That last 100,000 arrives in just 1.35 years without doing anything different. Same person, same savings rate, same market. The compounding engine is just running hotter because there is more mass to compound. When you reach $200,000, your annualized return at a 5% rate has the same dollar value as the amount you save each year. 5% times 200,000 equals 10,000. Let that land. The market is now matching your labor, dollar for dollar. After that, the market starts winning. You are not chasing the threshold anymore. The threshold is pulling you forward. If you invest $100,000 in the stock market at a historical 10% average return, your investment doubles every 7.2 years using the rule of 72. After 7.2 years, your 100,000 becomes 200,000. In 14 years, it grows to 400,000 without adding another dollar. 7% on 100,000 is $7,000 per year. After 100,000 market returns start doing real work, a 7% year on 100,000 is $7,000. That is meaningful. 7% on 30,000 is 2,100. It is not meaningful. That is the difference between below and above escape velocity, expressed in dollars per year. There is a guy I keep thinking about when I explain this. I am going to call him Marcus. He is 37. He has $52,000 in his 401k. He has been contributing consistently for 6 years. He feels fine about it. He told someone at a backyard cookout that he is pretty much on track. He has been saying some version of that for about 4 years. He is running the rocket at 90% of escape velocity and calling it flying. I will come back to Marcus. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. Before I tell you what happened to Marcus, I want to destroy the most persistent myth in personal finance. You think the problem is income. You think if you just earn more, the raise, the side hustle, the promotion, the second job, the numbers would start working. That is the wrong frame entirely. The problem is not income. The problem is the threshold. And the distinction is not subtle. It is the single most important reversal in this video. Consider two people, both 38. One earns $120,000 a year. Nice apartment, reasonable car, 2 vacations. His investable net worth, again, not counting the house, is $75,000. He has been earning good money for 7 years. The other person earns $68,000 a year, has a roommate, drives something boring. Her investable net worth is $112,000. She crossed the threshold 2 years ago. Fast forward 20 years, same savings rates as a percentage of income, same market. The first person, the higher earner, ends up with roughly $450,000 at 58. The second person ends up with roughly $730,000. She earns 44% less per year. She ends up with 62% more invested wealth at 58. The difference is not income. The difference is the threshold. Since 1957, the S&P 500 has delivered a 10.26% compounded annual return. At $75,000, 10% of that is $7,500 per year, working for you passively. At $112,000, it is $11,200. That gap, $3,700 per year, compounds forward for 2 decades. The person with the lower income but the higher threshold starts each year with a structural advantage, and it widens every single year. This is where it gets really interesting. The conventional wisdom around personal finance says optimize for income, negotiate your salary, hustle for more. And look, income matters. I am not saying otherwise, but the optimization sequence is wrong. You should be optimizing for threshold velocity. How fast can I get to 100,000 in invested assets? Because once you cross it, the required income drops. The market is now covering part of your savings target. You start needing less raw fuel because momentum has taken over. The question is not, how do I earn more? The question is, how do I get to 100,000 in invested assets as fast as physically possible, park it in a low-cost index fund, and then leave it alone while the math does what math does? Now you're probably thinking, okay, I understand the threshold. I will get there eventually. And eventually is exactly where this goes wrong, because the speed matters more than the destination. Here's the part that never makes it into a standard retirement calculator. And honestly, it is the part that most financial advisors are not equipped to talk about. Partly because their business model charges by assets under management, meaning the closer you are to the threshold, the less valuable you are as a client, and the less urgency exists in their financial interests to help you cross it fast. I spent months going through 50 years of retirement data, sequence of returns research, tax treatment studies, and Social Security timing analysis to build a framework that turns this threshold math into a concrete exit plan. That framework is a digital book called The Exit Code. 8 chapters, no filler, built entirely on data. 2 things in it are directly relevant to what we are talking about. The first is what I call the 4% trap, the conventional retirement rule that says withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually and you are fine. Turns out that rule is derived from a specific 30-year window in US market history, and it breaks in specific sequence of return environments that statistically happen more often than the retirement planning industry acknowledges. I replace it in that chapter with a dynamic withdrawal method that adjusts based on actual market conditions rather than a fixed percentage that was never designed to handle, say, a flat decade at the beginning of retirement. The second is the Social Security bridge strategy, how to sequence your income sources so you can delay claiming until age 70, which increases your monthly benefit by up to 8% per year past full retirement age, without going broke in the gap between retirement and collection. That decision alone is often worth 6 figures over a retirement lifetime, and most people make it by guessing. The exit code is available through the link in the description for less than dinner for 2. Every year you wait to make these decisions is a year of compounding you lose on the wrong side of the math. Now let me talk about what is quietly stealing from you right now, even if you are already investing. Take a $1 million portfolio growing at 7% over 30 years. A 1% advisory fee could shrink your portfolio by about 25% over those 30 years, translating to nearly $1.9 million less at the end. 1% per year. For 30 years, $1.9 million. Not stolen, not fraudulent, just compounding in reverse. Fees compound in reverse. Every year, that 1 to 2% fee is not just taken out once it reduces the base on which your future growth is calculated. Over 20 or 30 years, that reversal effect becomes enormous. Here's the part that very few people stop to calculate. AUM fees grow as your portfolio grows. If your $1 million portfolio grows to $1.5 million, your annual fees with a traditional advisor jump from $10,000 to $15,000, even though the level of service likely remains the same. You are paying more each year for the same activity because the fee is a percentage, not a flat rate. The portfolio growing is working against you on the fee side, while it is working for you on the compounding side. Those 2 forces are fighting each other. Now, a smart person in a nice office will look across the table at you and explain that they provide behavioral coaching, tax coordination, estate planning, and emotional support during volatile markets. And some advisors absolutely do provide those things, and the value is real. I am not saying all advisors are bad. I am saying know what you are paying for and calculate whether you are receiving it. According to an SEC study, an account charged a 1% annual fee would be worth $30,000 less after 20 years compared to one with a 0.25% fee. That is the documented government-published math on fee drag. Most investors have never seen it because it is not in the brochure. There's a story from 2008 that I want to use here. Not about the crash, about the conversations around it. There was a pattern I saw repeated in dozens of financial news stories that year, and it went something like this. Someone sitting across from their advisor, $300,000 in savings, watching their portfolio drop 30%, being told to stay the course. The advisor charged 1% per year. The portfolio was in actively managed mutual funds that, in the following decade, would underperform the S&P 500 index. The advice the person needed, sit tight, stop watching, buy a low-cost index fund, was available for free on the Vanguard website. The advice they paid for was statistically not better than the free advice. And they paid 10 plus years of 1% fees to receive it. The math on that, compounded, is not small. Stay with me, because the reason Marcus is still at $52,000 is not math. That is the part that blindsides people. Saving is invisible. Nobody sees your growing investment account at dinner, but they see your new watch, your vacation photos, your car. In a culture that signals status through consumption, saving offers no social reward. Marcus is not irrational. He is responding perfectly to the incentive structure around him. Every time he invests, nothing happens that other people can see. Every time he spends on something visible, he gets real social feedback. His brain has been running this experiment for years, and the results are consistent. Spending pays a social dividend. Saving pays zero social dividend until it is so large that people ask how you did it, which is usually too late. The second psychological trap at the $50,000 to $80,000 range is something I call the safety illusion. 2 in 3 Americans do not believe they will ever save enough to feel financially secure. At $52,000, Marcus technically feels more secure than 77% of his peers who have less. That comparison, not to the threshold, but to other people below him, is telling his brain he has already won something he has not. He is still below escape velocity. But relative success is a powerful sedative. The third trap is the fear of downside. People hold losing investments too long, hoping to break even, rather than accepting the loss. The fear of losing money keeps people in low return savings accounts instead of investing. Marcus has half his liquid savings in a high yield account at 4.8% because the market volatility of the past 2 years makes him nervous. He is earning 4.8% on money that historically earns 7 to 10% in a broad index fund. That decision is costing him roughly 2 to 5% per year on $50-something thousand, roughly $1,000 to $2,500 a year in opportunity cost, while he waits for the market to calm down. The market does not calm down. It just changes what it's worried about. Marcus at 37 with $52,000. He stays at his contribution rate. He leaves his high yield savings mostly in cash. By 43, he has $91,000. He is close. He can feel the threshold. But he spent 6 years earning well below market returns on money that could have crossed the line at 39 if he had pushed. Hitting that first $100,000 is crucial because after that, compound interest takes over. Saving the next $100,000 happens faster, often with less effort. Marcus gave up 6 years of that acceleration because he was comfortable at 90% of escape velocity. If he had pushed to $100,000 by 39 and left it alone at 7%, by 58, he would have had roughly $233,000 just from that initial capital, with nothing added. His actual path has him closer to $160,000 from that same starting capital, $73,000. The invisible cost of almost there. Now, I want to run the numbers on 2 specific people because abstract math is easy to ignore and specific math is harder. Both are 38 years old. Both have $75,000 in invested assets, not counting their house, their car, any of it, just money in the market. Same everything. Same income, same savings capacity going forward of $1,000 per month, same market returns at 7% annually. Person A has the $75,000, feels good about it, decides to buy a slightly nicer car financing it. Over 4 years, bleeds some surplus. A kitchen renovation happens, lifestyle absorbs the remaining savings margin. At 48, 10 years later, their portfolio has grown modestly to about $92,000. They never cross the threshold. Now they get serious and start saving $1,000 a month for the remaining period to age 58. At 58, their total investable assets, roughly $325,000. Person B also has $75,000 at 38, makes a decision that feels like deprivation for exactly 2 years. No new car, no renovation. Brown bag lunch 4 days a week. Cancels subscriptions, sells something, crosses $100,000 at age 40, invests the same $1,000 a month from that point forward at 7% for 18 years to age 58. Their total at 58, roughly $746,000. Person A, $325,000, person B, $746,000. The difference is $421,000. Same income, same savings rate for most of the period, same market. One made a 2-year decision and the other did not. $421,000 from a decision window of about 24 months. That is the threshold math. That is escape velocity versus almost escape velocity. Person B is not a genius, did not get lucky, did not inherit anything, did not start a startup, made one decision in one window, and the math did the rest. Now, 3 practical takeaways, specific to this, not generic. First, stop including your house in your investable net worth benchmark. When you are tracking progress toward the $100,000 threshold, exclude your primary residence from the calculation. Home equity makes up the majority of net worth for middle wealth households. Excluding it drops the overall median from $192,900 to roughly $57,900. If you include your house, you might think you've already crossed the threshold when your actual investable assets are still in the $50,000 to $80,000 range. The house is not doing the compounding work. It is not producing 7% annual growth that you can access and redeploy. It is not the rocket. Stop counting it as the rocket. Second, treat the threshold as a speed problem, not a savings problem. Getting to 100,000 by 25 instead of 35 could be the difference between retiring with 2 million versus 1 million without saving a single additional dollar. Apply that logic to any starting age. 20 extra years of compounding adds nearly $1.9 million. The goal is not, I will get there eventually. The goal is, how many months can I shave off getting to 100,000? Every month you shave is not a month of early savings. It is a month of additional compounding on everything that follows. Your income, your habits, your cost structure, run them all through the lens of how fast you cross the line, not how comfortable you feel while approaching it. Third, if you are currently between $50,000 and $100,000 in invested assets, you are in the most consequential window of your wealth building life. And it almost certainly does not feel like it. It feels like the middle. It is not the middle. It is the last leg before the gear shift. The journey to the first 100,000 is the hardest phase. It requires discipline at a point where rewards feel small and distant. That is normal. But the rewards are not distant. They are deferred until the moment you cross the line, and then they arrive structurally, not as a reward you receive once, but as a permanent change in how fast the portfolio grows. Every dollar you redirect away from that range toward a depreciating asset, a lifestyle upgrade, anything that does not compound is not a dollar spent today. It is a dollar that cannot grow for 20 or 30 years. The compounding cost of that dollar is not 10% per year. It is 10% per year for however many years you have left from today. Marcus, by the way, figured it out. Not at 37. At 43, when his wife ran the numbers on what 91,000 and still 3% contributions looked like at 65, they sat down on a Sunday afternoon with a spreadsheet. They found $2,000 per month they could redirect without destroying their quality of life. They hit 100,000 12 months later. The gear shifted. They have not looked back. The window was always there. They just had to want it enough to actually run the numbers. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And it starts not with $1 million goal, but with the $100,000 threshold that everyone knows about, and 77.9% of Americans never actually cross. You think you are almost there. You might actually be almost there. The most expensive thing you can do right now is let almost there feel the same as there.